I was like casting a wide net. I wasn't just into electronic music. I was just like discovering so much all at once. Experimental music, indie music, metal, and electronic music, all those bands I mentioned that I was exposed to through these like Mew Essentials charts, like I said, One Tricks Point Never, Burial, Fortet, Nicholas Yar, Deep House, and all of my friends at that time, when I was just talking about music on a daily basis, knew me as like the weird genre guy, right? And we'll talk about this. We'll hop into this conversation in a bit. And this is why I mentioned this in the email thread that I started with you. This is a big point of interest for me, is that when I told them that I was listening to something called like, I don't know, post jazzcore, they're like, what the fuck is that? And why aren't you normal? Can you be normal for a second, right? And like listen to Arctic Monkeys with us. Electronic music falls for that slippery slope all the time, right? And the debates about where the borders are, where the lines are endless. Like, like I mentioned, what are the differences between jungle and drum and bass? Where do these signifiers come from? What is breakcore, and why is that such a contentious topic? And we'll get into all of that. But first, let me introduce our guest. Welcome back to the Radio FWD podcast. Thanks so much for joining me, RamonPang. Is that right? RamonPang. RamonPang. Ramon is a DJ and musician based in LA, and also co-founder of Tabula Rasa Records. Now, my exposure to Ramon was through your video essays on Instagram Reels and TikTok and that sort of thing. That introduced me to your music, and also brought me back to my days of discovering niche subgenres that are lost in the SoundCloud files of some Filipino artist or some artist in Iraq or something like that. Like that sort of music discovery that you're into. So if you could talk a little bit first to start out, just a little bit about yourself and how you got into electronic music would be awesome. And then what got you into like video essays? Why was that why the history of electronic music itself interests you so much?
Yeah, just to introduce myself. My name is Ramon. I DJ, produce, run a label, do a lot of music stuff as RamonPang. I've been doing it since about 2013, and I basically do it full time. It's like my whole job now, like doing A&R and like side gigs for lots of other people. But for my own like personal stuff, I like to do a mix of like Aphex Twin type stuff, IDM, Fortet, all the really great artists you mentioned, One Tricks Point Never. And I try to mix that alongside with my appreciation for all the different types of dance music that just interests me at the time. I got into it around 2013, around like the Twitch.tv era. My introduction to it was like pretty unorthodox. I was like a pretty big like metalhead and like metal elitist for a long time. And then I would just listen to like, Slayer, Megadeth, like, all those guys like while playing StarCraft. And then my friends who I would stream with on Twitch were like, oh, there's this music festival happening called Ultra Music Festival, and that's what I learned about EDM. And then I just delved in really quickly. I went from like all these like really mainstream EDM, like trancey kind of big room artists, and then I delved into Aphex Twin, Fortet, Sophie, like all these people within like the next year or so, just because I was so into it. I wanted to learn how to DJ and just become a part of that. And yeah, like almost like 12 years later, I'm right here,
Yeah.
And the short form videos, I actually only started doing them about 4 or 5 months ago. I was pretty averse to short form video for a very long time. It's just not the way that I consumed things for a very long time. I was like, I love like YouTube video essayists. Like I wanted to be one of those guys for a very long time. It was my fantasy to make like a 2-hour documentary of all the Aphex Twin like fun facts and stuff I knew.
Yeah, exactly. But all of this music knowledge stock rattling around our heads, right?
Yeah, and I'll get to how I like. I'm sure I'll get to how I like wanted to learn all that eventually. But in regards to the short form, like I originally did it for a little bit of a selfish reason. I was like, how can I get people who are into Aphex Twin but are like socialized and not like 90s techno elitist. They don't have like a can I swear on here? Like,
Yeah.
they don't have like a stick up their ass, you know. And they're also open to like, you know, people who are more modern, people who are into like trance music or like house music and more social music and stuff, because people like Aphex Twin, all this IDM stuff, you can listen to it like really weird music, but at the same time, you got to remember they're popular because they come from a very grassroots electronic rave scene. It's like all they talk about, and when they DJ, it is all like just straight up rave tracks, and I find that dichotomy so interesting. And figuring out how to capture an audience specifically like that was so difficult for me for the longest time, because I can't just put like Aphex Twin hashtag and like Tiesto hashtag in the same video. It's just not gonna like work because of the way stupid social media works and all that. So I was like, I need to talk about a wide array of stuff that I'm interested in a way that's like compelling. And then I'll like kind of introduce my music. People will see my name and associate me with, oh, that's the guy who knows how to talk about this stuff, but isn't like your normal, like, you know, old head elitist guy. Like, I want to be that bridge of like the context for the music, because it is extremely interesting to me. You know, like, I think it enhances my production and like my music making. I think it enhances my DJing, and I think it just enhances my experience of electronic music enjoyment overall. And I wanted to connect with people where that's really important to them. You know, there's nothing wrong with enjoying dance music in just the purely hedonistic physical sense, because it is insanely awesome for that. But I think that extra context just really, really gets me going, you know? Like,
on a technical aspect too, I wonder if this will bridge the one of the points you wanted to get to. Maybe we can get to it now. Why you were so interested in learning all the technical intricacies of Aphex Twin, all the secrets of Aphex Twin. Maybe that was part of the interest in your own production or your own music, or yeah, I'd love for you to go into that.
On a technical level, I'm not the most technically minded person, if I'm being honest. There are like people like Aphex, people like Autechre, who are like these real studio computer auteurs. Like, yes, they're following like some sort of creative endeavors and like explorations and stuff, but they are very technically like proficient. You know, Aphex Twin and Autechre, they're like opening up their synthesizers since the 90s. Autechre is making like these whole Max MSP systems that are like, it's like a lot of really crazy wizardry, and I honestly don't have the technical IQ for that. But like, I think learning on it on a technical level, and then seeing how it relates to like, oh, he's just taking acid techno kind of equipment at the time and just doing something a little bit different in it. I think one person's approach I really appreciate is like Oneohtrix Point Never. He was talking about David Lynch, and how David Lynch, the way that he would think about film or just like symbolism and stuff, is he's looking at these very ordinary objects and turning over the rocks in a sense, where you're thinking about how something so ordinary can be so interesting on such a deep level that you hit some sort of like subconscious that like gets the brain tickling, you know. And I think Aphex is kind of on that level where it's so freaky and alienating to people if you've never heard acid techno before. And what essentially he's doing is he's taking this acid techno and all the intricacies of it and applying this really like virtuosic kind of musicianship to it that's really sick. And I think that inspired me on like a personal level in making music in that way, where like turning something so of the time and so like, you know, in a sense popular, like, and making it like really freaky and like turning over the rocks as an artist is like the coolest thing ever to me.
Yeah. One of the things that I always talk about when I interview about film and we're talking about films that, you know, they're old. Some of the films that we're covering in the podcast are from the 70s or 60s, but we're always considering what the through line is to modern film history. And in the same way, I think electronic music, especially, artists often wear their influences on their sleeves. They are attributing maybe a genre that came before them by saying, hey, no, I'm also a acid techno artist. I'm also in the same family tree of IDM. Or I'm doing something new to dubstep. I'm making post dubstep, like something like Barry, right? But you are essentially giving the flowers to the artists that came before you, to the experimenters that came before you. Let's talk a little bit about genre. First of all, we can talk about acid techno and what that means. But how about just folks like Burial and One O Tricks Point Never? Who do they owe their influences to, and what is like the through line to modern genre and what we see today in the world of electronic music and what you're playing around with?
Yeah, this is actually a really, really good question. I think a lot of dance music actually has a pretty, in specific sections, there's actually always like a pretty like clear through line. But I think let's talk about like Burial and like Autechre and like people specifically like that. They all There's a great theory by this guy, Simon Reynolds, I believe is his name. He has a theory called the UK hardcore continuum. And it's a theory. I don't know if you've heard about this.
No, I haven't. No, this sounds great.
Essentially, it's a theory where the UK pre like rave and like pre Summer of Love like took all this amazing dance music coming out of the America like post disco. House music started emerging out of like Chicago, New York. Detroit started exporting like techno and stuff, and then hip hop breaks were mixing with like house music and stuff. The UK was essentially taking all of these and like making them like extremely extra sensory for like like their raves and stuff like that that were happening in like the fields. Like breakbeats started being sped up like almost like 50-60% faster, things like that. So essentially we have this like hypercharged version of dance music that's starting to come through to the UK. So we have people like going into raves, experiencing lots of music that's like both homegrown or like modified in some freaky way. I'm like gonna super TLDR this, but essentially a lot of artists like Burial says his main influence is like the afterglow of being at a rave, like listening to things like a DJ might play like UK garage or like hardcore breaks or like techno, and then he's making what feels like the afterglow of that, like the more DIY kind of super like melancholic version of that. And then meanwhile you have people like Aphex Twin and Autechre. Autechre was influenced by like 80s electro and like b-boy culture that came from America, and they wanted to apply that to like a techno mentality to that, especially in the early days. And Aphex Twin was literally DJing like acid techno raves in Cornwall, where they would take techno and just add these really squelchy, like, I guess for lack of a better word, really druggy kind of high pitched sounds to things to make, your senses just go nuts. In the 90s, like that's like, yeah, I can't imagine. But I think the through line that this runs through today is we're still kind of feeling all around the world, we're still kind of feeling the effects of this UK hardcore continuum that's like influenced by Jamaican sound system culture, influenced by like breakbeats and us like in the UK like kind of messing up like the American dance music like genres and stuff like that in the greatest way possible. And you'll still hear it in stuff like modern day dubstep or modern day like techno. Like there are certain bass sounds and stuff that literally could have only been culminated from a very drugged out 90s UK that are still like influenced today, because these sounds and like, I guess for lack of a better word, like audio memes get passed down from DJ to DJ to DJ throughout like the last 30 years. And I find that so interesting, because then we could also look back on like people like Aphex and be like, I have this freedom to be freaky because Aphex Twin was. And if somebody doesn't even know about acid techno, but they love like Aphex Twin's drum and bass stuff, you could make like a whole sound just based off of that. And I would still kind of link it to like the UK hardcore continuum theory. There's a lot, some people have like a lot of flaws with it and stuff like that doesn't capture everything, but I think it's a really good way of looking at least like extreme, really bass heavy dance music, that a lot of these like freakier artists kind of come from.
Well, by virtue of being such a sample-heavy genre, the DNA of artists before you are literally embedded into your music. Whereas something like in film, everything is novel unless you're doing something like some sort of remix or something really experimental with remixing. But I mean, like you'll still see very obvious and direct homages. I don't know if you saw The Substance, but there are obvious homages to The Shining. But this is something that will happen to the films that are most influential in the world of cinema. But there's no way of being like, oh, that's literally The Shining in the film, right? Unless they did something like that. Whereas, yeah.
One example I would think of that literally like whole genres have been born from like just taking other people's music and like doing something simple like speeding it up. Like UK garage like is a genre where they originally were taking like really swung New York or Chicago like house records, and they were like throwing like Sunday day parties in like the 90s, and they needed to keep people like dancing. So they would take these like house records on the turntable and literally just like speed it up like 5 or 10 BPM. And because of the way the turntable and the technology works, the drums would get a little bit thinner. It would get a little faster and the voices would get more high pitched. And then, so we're literally taking like a house record and resampling it and pitching it up and stuff. And then people are taking the feeling that gives them and they're like, I'm going to make a record that's original, that literally sounds like that, where it's just a faster house beat, thinner drums, higher pitched everything. So it's literally, it's kind of what you said, where it's like, we took a remix of something, for lack of a better word, and we are remaking like something fresh in that image, basically. Yeah.
Just from like the behavior of the DJs trying to keep
the behavior of DJs and like the behavior of like technology, and DJs are influenced by venues, people, you know, like if you need to get people like going late into like Sunday morning, if they've been raving since Saturday night, you gotta play faster music, you gotta play harder music, you know, like.
Well, and my example would just be something born from the internet age of remixing, and the subcultures that birth from the internet would be like something like vaporwave or nightcore, where it's as simple as a song getting slowed down and reverb added to it, and that now has branched out into something really unique and creative. But it's kind of the same way. Rather than looking for a behavioral response from your viewership, now you're looking for an aesthetic or sort of aura that didn't exist before, right? Especially with vaporwave. I mean, so much so that the aesthetic extends beyond the music itself. It's the album covers. It's everything.
It's, while we're still talking about genres, and especially with the internet, like modern day internet, like changing the way electronic music and music in general is presented, I feel like vaporwave was kind of like the perfect like proto example, where we were literally taking something that existed before, you know, like Plunderphonics, like Chopped and Screwed. I forget his name, something Oswald. He was like the father of Plunderphonics.
Oh, okay,
They were just taking like, you know, like these songs and slowing it down, looping them, drenching them in reverb. But vaporwave, we add the whole aesthetic of this, you know, vaporware thing, post-capitalism type of thing, and it adds it just that combination of audio and visual makes it appeal to people in a different way that like maybe just it not having an album cover at all might not, you know what I mean? And that's completely fine. I think like the way music is presented is so much more of a bigger thing than people want to admit. I have this theory where since we evolved to like recognize that a dying animal has like a certain sound for survival as like cavemen, I feel like it's impossible for us to separate like certain audio cues and stuff from the visual cues of everything, you know, like with the onset of recorded music for a long time, we were using like vinyl, where we would see like a band play or something. But with something that's electronic, for example, it's so not of this natural world that when you, and even something like slowing down an 80s song is so not of this natural world, it's not something you would hear like somebody played live unless it's a recording. Just by adding like a certain visual on top of it, people are gonna associate that sound with that thing forever. It's kind of what we see with modern day breakcore, where people like only associate breakcore with like anime and like
profile
this
pictures.
anime profile pictures, like this edgy aesthetic. And what's interesting, like with I'm gonna go on a side tangent here. Like with breakcore,
No,
like
let's do it.
there's always been like an anime subsect, but it wasn't like all of it. You know what I mean? But
Sure.
now, like it's really hard to separate it for a lot of people, especially like young people. You know what I mean? People who are like 14, 15 when they find out about breakcore because it's so online. Like I could have easily fallen into that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the visual is such an important part, and I'm sure as like a film guy, you understand this. It's like
Absolutely.
the image kind of is above a lot of things, you know, no matter how much cultural or like audio like references you put behind it. It's like the actual image often precedes everything, you know? Like,
well, when I picture a typical rave setting, like you were saying, it is extra sensory. The performance of a DJ at the booth, like they're oftentimes dancing very like energetically to pump the crowd up and that sort of thing. But it's not like you're watching a band play, right?
no.
It's not like you're watching somebody play a guitar where you know directly the link between them strumming the strings and the sound that comes out of the guitar, right?
Yeah.
The performance of a DJ at the DJ booth is oftentimes not enough to elicit the sort of associations we have with live music. And to me, rave has always been associated with strobe lights, the visual aspect of things. I mean, you think of like modern music festivals dedicated to electronic music, like EDC or something like that, and the set design and the graphics that all of these artists bring with them, the digital graphics. That's, I think, again, going to this point of the association that I think electronic music needs to make with the visual aspect of their
Yeah. In
aesthetic.
electronic music, it's so interesting because it's so wide. You can have that extreme extra sensory, like it's like going on like Universal Studios. You know what I mean? Like where you experience a ride like all the way through, and that can be extremely enjoyable for like a lot of people because of like the massive scale of it. You know, like if you want large music and you have a large presentation, that's just going to enhance it. You know what I mean? That's why I can never like knock like mainstream EDM, because like I get it. I've been in like a huge sea of people and you're hearing this music extremely loud and there's fireworks everywhere. It's amazing. You know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like there are people who are also valid where it's like we need to take it back to what raving really, really felt like, where it's like in warehouses and very minimal smoke machines. You can't even see the DJ, you know, because there's a certain like communal aspect of that that's also really important. When you hear like techno or like something like Autechre playing in pitch black, where it's only you and the sound, and like there's all this internal thought going on and just like this extreme like pulsating stuff going on in your body, like that is also like in its sense an extra sensory experience, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. We should dive into Autechre, I think, because I just saw them live in Toronto. I took a buddy of mine who also is not fully committed to the EDM scene or anything like that. I mean, he likes all sorts of music and is also open to experimental music and experimental stimulation, for lack of a better word, right? Because I think that Autechre concert, there's no other way to put that. It was like an experience, really, and because it's so devoid of all of the expectations of electronic music, I think that the regular EDM scene might have created, you're just left with yourself and the music, right? I thought ahead of time. I thought ahead of time that I knew I wouldn't be dancing around and moving around a lot, so we got balcony seated seats, so I could really just absorb
the sound,
the music, and sit down and just like think of just fully immerse myself in the sound, right? Okay. I'd love for you to talk about Autechre in particular, what makes them special, what makes them tick, and their history, if you know it. And then you got to see them live too, right?
Yes, I saw them twice in LA.
In this concept, with the In the Dark, right?
Same thing, same tour, yeah.
Okay, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well, and better articulated than I could.
Yeah, I think the best way I can describe Autechre in a nutshell is that their music is like their whole career and their whole music is purely focused on sonic exploration. It's pure, like, when I read interviews about them and they talk about why they're making certain tracks or why they're making certain decisions, they're literally talking about it mainly in like physical and spatial terms. Like one of the things is like, oh, if a certain like reverb on a certain kick gives you the feeling of like being in a cave, then bring it on. You know what I mean? That's the way they talk about their music. And from the beginning, like I said before, they were kind of coming from 80s b-boy culture. They loved like Mantronics, Africa Bambaataa, and they were also coming up in the time of acid techno and hardcore breaks. And a lot of their early stuff is more taking this acid techno, hip-hoppy, breakbeat influenced dance music and putting essentially ambient music and really like lush like pads and stuff, like really quiet on top of these like dance music skeletons.
We should probably explain what acid means.
Yeah, so I keep saying acid. Acid bass is this sound that comes from a TP-303 synthesizer, and I might butcher this history a little bit, but essentially it comes from where house music came from, and they were trying to replicate bass lines. It was a commercial failure, but then people found out if you took this technology and squelched it in a certain way, it made a really druggy sound. There's a track called Acid Test by Roman Flugel, I believe is his name. That's like a classic like 90s acid house track. But when I talk about acid house as a genre, it's this mentality of literally like making things squelch, for lack of a better word. It's like taking this music and making it very freaky in a way. But Autechre was taking this scene that was very popular and like a lot of raves and stuff happening around like, you know, where they lived, Manchester and stuff. And they wanted to make the more listening version of that at first, while at the same time experimenting with making the beats and the sounds as like freaky as they can. You can hear it on their first like 3 albums or so. But yeah, I'm gonna keep talking about Autechre for the next 10 minutes if I don't stop myself.
Awesome.
But where we are now essentially is that they've evolved so much, where hip hop, breakbeat, techno is still like in their rhythmic DNA, but their methodology for making the music is so just strange compared to like what they were doing in the 90s. You were sequencing on like drum machines, playing synths and recording it, overdubbing it. Nowadays the music is, I describe it like it's like a game engine where they have these scenes that are running certain tracks, but different parameters make different rhythmic like pockets and stuff interact in different ways. And if you listen to a lot of Autechre live sets from this tour, for example, you'll hear similarities in the sounds and structures of these game engine running tracks or whatever, but the way that they evolve and stuff is completely improvisational and on the fly. So my experience with them live was that it's interesting because the sounds and the rhythmic like feeling that I had was exactly what I expected, but it's true that like seeing music this intense in the dark, it just feels like an extra sensory attack on one sense in particular, your hearing, and it's dark, nobody's on their phones and stuff. So I almost felt like peer pressure to like pay as close attention as possible. And it's so like complex and so like strange what's happening in your ears, but the pulse like just slowly always manages to bring you back. And I think that's like one of the coolest things I've ever experienced live, you know? And I don't even think you get that from listening to like the soundboard live recordings like after. I think being there live in a physical space, listening to this like just insane assault on your ears is like just really gets your brain racking, because it makes the music feel like this physical sensation that's like simultaneously like happening in here and like out there. Like I loved it. I loved every second of it. Like both of the shows that I saw. Like
super relatable, everything you felt. I definitely I had these moments, but it was like such a meditative experience for me, to the point where definitely in the middle section of the show, I found myself thinking about not the show, about my life and about I was like stressing out even a little bit, and I was just like processing emotions because I was just alone with my thoughts and this assault on my senses, but not in a way that it's overwhelming, right? Because the rhythm, like you said, is still there. The pulse is still there. It's not quite free jazz where it's hard to find the time signature.
Yeah.
Like it can bring you back, right? But I'm going through my emotions and like processing all these feelings, and then something switches in the song and it brings me back. Now I'm focused on the music again. I'm trying to imagine like what they just did, like to the sound or something like that. And so that was, I have never had a concert experience quite like that before.
It's very unlike anything that I've experienced before. Like I've seen like people who do like Max MSP like type bass performances.
What is that?
Max MSP is a type of audio programming visual language that Autechre runs their system off of, and it can get very, very under the hood. Like it's so technical. I don't have time to explain it, but it's Max MSP is like essentially a programming language that can be like video, it can be audio. They use it mainly for audio. I've seen like people perform with it for audio, and it's a completely different like just experience. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a creator I saw recently. Someone sent it to me that they are live coding their music and commenting over it. I don't know if you know. I don't know.
I know of like live coding. I have a few friends who like live code and stuff.
Yeah, and I thought it was great that their voice, how they're articulating what they're doing, is kind of like becomes part of the track because they jump in there with comments on time and on rhythm. So I thought that was a really unique kind of thing, but it also goes to show the technical depth of this genre in the same way that, I don't know, you were a metalhead at one point, so maybe you know something like power metal with ultra technical guitar riffs and ultra technical, exactly. Or even something on the other end of the spectrum, which I think fits more in line with Autechre, something like Sun, the band Sun, like the drone metal band.
Oh yeah, I know of them.
That also have this feeling of, I don't know, like the sound wall completely enveloping your body and soul because it's just so overwhelming. The stacks that they use in the Sun concerts, that's another dream concert of mine. Just to kind of experience something so out there and so different sonically, you know what I mean? I was wondering if you could go in a little bit more depth on what Autechre, what are they playing? Like, what are they doing on their computers that's different? Because they're not just like they don't have tracks that they just play. It's kind of procedurally generated or something like that.
It's oh my gosh, I gotta figure out the easiest way I can explain it is that they are basically loading up sequencers that have like certain behaviors that the music can be, and they're loading them in, they're modulating them, changing certain parameters, changing how they evolve like in real time. And they have like a certain set of like sequencers and quote unquote tracks and events that can happen that they choose from.
I see. And then in terms of their decision to perform in the dark, how much of that do you think was maybe a response to what they felt the genre's headed, in the direction that the genre's headed?
They've actually been doing it since they started touring in the US in like 2001. I was talking to I'm good friends with this producer Machine Drum. He's amazing. And he told me he saw Autechre in 2001, and they were performing in the dark even back then. Like obviously the way they were performing was way different. They were on like drum machines and stuff back then, but they've always been doing it in the dark because, like I said before, all they care about is like the physicality of the music, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that's so cool. Like
yeah. One of your short form video essays is on influencer DJs and that sort of world of how the music industry is headed, or where especially the space that you occupy and your record label occupies. So hoping you could talk a little bit about what it's like uploading and presenting music nowadays, and what sort of challenges you face, especially in such a sample heavy genre that I don't, electronic music, again, we were talking about how it's by virtue of its nature sample heavy. So talk a little bit about Tabula Rasa and what that experience has been like, and maybe a little bit about live performing culture too.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot I can talk about here. So I'll start with the influencer DJ stuff. I think as a short background, we're in an era where DJing has never been more accessible. Like I think a lot of people picked it up during the pandemic and stuff as well, because it's honestly not very difficult to learn how to DJ. I think you can learn how to DJ honestly in an afternoon if you have like the music files for it. So we're in an era where like also on TikTok and like short form videos, it really rewards this level of, like I was talking about with the image, like partying. When you see like a lot of people going crazy behind a DJ, it can give you like and the music is really good. It gives you this like exhilaration, like you're there in a crowd, all your problems are gone, and you're just having a great time and dancing with like your friends, And I think a lot of people, normal people, like saw that and they were like, I want to become a part of that. I want to be the person at the center of that. I want to experience that. And I think that's amazing, honestly. Like I think everybody should like pursue DJing if they want to be a part of this like dance music experience. But I think the problem that happened is there are so many DJs like out there now, even more than there have ever been before. And when people see like influencer DJs, they're talking about people who like, I don't know, they like play video games, or they're like just actors. And then what
that's weird.
There's what was it? Oh yeah, there are people who are like actors or people who are like Twitch streamers or whatever, and they're going out and DJing and they're playing to like a lot of people. And then people who have been making music for like been involved in like techno local scenes or whatever for years are like, what the hell? Like, why are these people like popular and I'm still like struggling to get paid DJing and stuff? So it creates a really competitive culture that I think can make a lot of people discouraged, because it's like, imagine DJing in a club and like nobody's there. Like it's kind of a sucky feeling, especially when you're first starting out.
Yeah.
And I definitely felt that way for a very long time. It's why I joined Tabula Rasa Records with my business partner Joseph White, because I was like the weirdo who loved like Aphex Twin and like all this like really like 90s like UK music and stuff, but everybody around me just wanted to hear like house music and like trap music and like all the popular stuff, and they didn't want to mix my stuff in there, or they'd kind of do it reluctantly. So I was like, I'm gonna start like my own community of like-minded people, and I think in attracting like those people, like through all the different ways that I've done it, through like the record label, through like just meeting people and talking to people on like Reddit or like Discords or Twitch or whatever, I kind of became like a micro niche influencer in a way, because like now when people see like IDM or like Aphex Twin or whatever, they think of me because I was so like pushing so hard to like find my people. And I'm so happy I found like people who resonate with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But the influencer-ness of it feels very weird to me sometimes, because I just feel like I'm part of a community, like a commune of like the larger dance music DJ space. I don't feel like I'm like very important, but people see me as important because I provide like subcultural capital where I can like, be the bridge between like EDM and like more weirder stuff,
Or be the arbiter of taste in this genre too, right? If you're making a video on a record that you think is important, and now that you've built an audience, you've built a commune of IDM weirdos and aficionados, there's some level of like almost responsibility to
exactly
the sort of things that you love.
And it stresses me out because I'm like, I wasn't there for like the 90s, you know what I mean? I was born in 96. Like I can only speak from like my personal lens and what I love and what I've read about it. Because a lot of what people talked about or read about it, because DJ culture is so fast, because everything is like, all the magazines and a lot of online articles were lost to time. People kind of form their own narratives around this really abstract music and dance music and what it meant to all of them. So when I say something that kind of disagrees with them, even if it came from the artist themselves. Like a lot of people get very defensive because the music means so much to them.
Mm.
And I feel bad because like I don't want to be that guy. I want to be like part of the community. I want to be that guy that like teaches people the right things. You know what I mean? But I've gotten a lot better about like being easy on myself, you know, and just trying to present things from like, this is my personally what I like about stuff, you know, and this is just my experience of why I love this stuff. And I think more so making these short form videos and like being quote unquote an influencer or whatever is like just a result of I love this stuff so much and I want to learn, figure out all the different connections and like, you know, look under the rocks, like I said about David Lynch and stuff. And I want that knowledge to go somewhere. So that's why I like do these videos and also put it into my music that people check out because of my videos, which is crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can also imagine there's some frustration if there's elements of the subgenre, like you were saying earlier, that are post-capitalist in nature. They're grassroots. They are community funded. They're also, you know, copyright is like one of the most frustrating elements for any artist, right? Like, why shouldn't I be able to just make a Mickey Mouse movie if it's original and unique? You know what I mean? But the same goes for why can't I just sample something and make something wholly original out of that, right? Yeah. So by nature, there's some element of like the pieces, the components of your art are also communal. Like now that they're out in the world, they get remixed and chopped and screwed.
Exactly. Yeah, and honestly, part of being a DJ is just understanding that that's the flow of things. People who are not as skilled might like sample your stuff and like remix your stuff and edit your stuff, and you just got to be okay with it because to me it's part of like rave. I think rave and dance music, it's just part of the folk music, it's part of the art. You know, I think if somebody like sampling my stuff helps them like create new ideas surrounding like how to approach music, I think that's totally fine with me. You know what I mean? I think there's so much like dance music is literally built off of like sampling. I mean, like jungle and drum and bass started from the Amen break, you know? Like do you know about like all of that stuff? Or
I'd love for you to talk about it. I know a little bit about it, but I'd love for you.
So the Amen break comes from this track from I believe the 70s or 60s or something called Amen Brother. It was the B-side to a very popular track at the time, and it has this breakdown, like this really, really funky break beat that has been one of the most used like snippets of audio throughout all of history. You could hear it on NWA Straight Out of Compton. You can hear it on every single like jungle track, and it's everywhere. If you look up like Amen break sample, there are so many good documentaries about it.
It's the Wilhelm scream of music.
It's the Wilhelm scream of music, but what's awesome about it is people treat it like sport at the same time. Like jungle is like, okay, the Amen break is almost it's both it's an audio meme and it's like an instrument at the same time. It's like we have the kick, hi-hat, snare of this like audio sample. Who can chop this up and morph it and affect it in the craziest way? And that's how like, you know, like Square Pusher like is a big like consulate of the Amen break and stuff, and people are still doing insane stuff with it today. Like technology is still, music making technology is still evolving. It's making it easier to just do whatever you want to whatever you want, and you have this, you know, legendary 5-second snippet of audio, and by using it you're like becoming part of like this audio through line that's been happening in dance music for a very long time, but it's also like an instrument, you know? So it's crazy that one 5-second sample has had so much influence, but yet the drummer who, you know, drummed the actual breakbeat like died homeless, you know? Like that's just something that, you know, it really sucks, you know? And I think it's, people in dance music have set up like GoFundMe's and stuff for like his family and stuff like that. But that is like the downside to, you know, using samples without permission. That kind of sucks and stuff. But at the same time, like I think about all of my favorite music, like DJ Shadow's introducing and like, you know, a lot of sample based records and like dance music records. All the ethical arguments like aside, I'm just like, if these people hadn't sampled this music illegally, this might have never come out and like changed my life. You know what I mean? Like, and it's, Yeah, it's
I
just
always
something
think
to be
of the
aware of.
avalanche.
It's important to be aware of all this nuance when we're talking about like dance music and sampling. There is like, you know, it makes you feel like part of a community when you engage with both sides like that, you know? Like
Yeah, I always think of the Avalanches, Since I Left You, as one of those albums that got introduced to me at a younger age, and marveling at the technical aspect, the fact that this is all created from samples, and but that is like the most extreme version. This is really a tribute to what sampling is as a
yeah.
creative tool, you know. Um, you talked a little bit about how technology is still evolving and morphing. One of the things that rubs me the wrong way and what scares me about music production and streaming and what I imagine you're encountering as somebody who started a record label is recently, well, this is one of the this is the how do I say cornerstone moment or flashbulb moment that really
Watershed
made me
moments.
nervous. Watershed moment, Jesus Christ. Watershed moment that really freaked me out is the OK Lou new Tiny Desk concert, which is the starting sponsor of it for NPR is Moises, who does Gen AI for musicians, and they make plugins that, you know, are powered by generative AI. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, how you feel about Gen AI maybe as a tool for creators, or whether how is it different, right? Philosophically, to sample music yourself, chop and screw it without permission. If those artists hadn't done it, we wouldn't be here with Plundertronics and with introducing. But the same thing goes for all of these companies that took the entire internet's data and powered their generative AI algorithms.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. AI in music is one of the most discussed things right now. Especially at training. It's not even training on like the full music files. Like a lot of this like generative AI is actually trained on stuff that was available on streaming or YouTube. So think about it. Like you have like a 5-minute song that's about like 50 megabytes if you have like the full uncompressed WAV file. These generative AI models are training on files that are 5 megabytes. You know what I mean? Like literally 10 times less the audio actual like points and like sample data and stuff like that. You know, so there is literally like it's not capturing every single sonic thing that's occurring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a 5 megabyte file sounds fine to us because of the magic of like, you know, audio compression and how amazing it is now. You know what I mean? But like a lot of this AI is on one level, it's not going to capture like all the technical aspects, all the high end and stuff of the music as well. There's a lot that it doesn't capture, but I think on a more personal and creative level, I think listening to straight up AI music is like just it makes people feel a bit icky. You know what I mean? Like I think people have that adverse reaction to it, but that's not what I'm trying to talk about. I think what I'm trying to talk about is like the act of like making music with AI is something where, you know, environmental concerns and stuff aside, I think it just feels weird on my personal creative like end. I'm a guy that likes a slot machine approach to electronic music, if I'm being honest. I love randomization, and I love like procedurally generating things and stuff like that in my music and taking the best bits of it and stuff. But AI generating stuff, I will admit I have like experimented with like, I don't know, AI generating like a jazz sample and then like sampling it and stuff, but it doesn't feel, I always have this weird moral quandary within me like doing something like that where it's like, oh, I'm literally taking like a kind of like slime or ooze of like something that's kind of been dripped down and then inserting that into my thing. Like that's kind of rooted in the DNA and stuff, and like kind of how I talked about with working on a subconscious, unconscious level and turning over rocks and stuff like that. I feel like on some level people feel that there's a certain roboticness and stuff to something, and I just, and if anything, I feel it, and that's enough for me to like not want to use it. But at the same time, like I think, like I said, ethical, environmental concerns aside, I think people should follow their creative like junctions wherever it takes them. You know what I mean? Like if you want to like procedurally generate something and then do nothing with it and you get satisfaction out of that, you know, I think at the end of the day, dance music, electronic music is kind of modern day folk music where you can just be like a working class citizen and make music if you want to. If you get that satisfaction out of it, that's fine, you know, but I always think if you're really bad at making something, especially making music, but you still want to keep going at it, I feel like that just makes you want to hold on to dear life. You know what I mean? It's like that's what feels good about art. It's something feeling you want to get good at something. That it feels amazing. It's like Dark Souls, you know what I mean? Like like one of my quandaries, for example, one of the stupidest clips I've ever seen was this Suno president talking about you know, how will I think the interviewer was asking him something about what use will the modern day person have for generating like AI music? And his response was something like, "Oh, imagine you want to get really good at running. If you could press a button that means you're good at running, of course you would press it. So if you know, want to make, I don't think people enjoy actually learning about music or being bad about music. So, of course, like the modern person, if they want to hear like AI music, they would just like press a button, type in a prompt, and make it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And to me, that was like such like a I just feel bad for people who feel that way. You know what I mean? Like,
but I also
like,
I'm not sure how accurate it is for most people, right? I think most people do like learning how to make art and being bad at it at first. It's difficult. These are things that, you know, life gets easier and, you know, like modern medicine gets easier. Everything is more efficient. And our work is more efficient, and our productivity is like through the roof, right? We lose a little bit of that sense of struggle, right? When we don't know how to do something. When I was first learning how to interview, and I'm panicking in front of somebody who I admire, you know, sort of, that exact sort of feeling, right? I think that people in the, you know, venture capitalist world don't really think about the struggle in that same way, especially not artistically. They think about the end product.
Like, there's so much more another time we could talk about what it's like.
Sure. One of the full circle moments that I had since researching for this interview and since getting prep for this interview was DJ Roswell, who I discovered on one of those 4chan charts, probably, or some thread, one or the other, 9 years ago with his album None of This Is Real. Or this is 11 years ago now. Wow. Yeah.
Like a long time. Yes, something around there.
But that you know, I don't know what genre you might say it's adjacent to, but just that I remember listening to that album over and over again, and then I've fallen out of music discovery. I got stuck in my ways, and I've been listening to the same pop punk albums now for the last 5 years, just listening to pop or whatever over and over again, or Midwest emo bands that I like. But all my discovery and all my time and free time for this passion, the interviewing particularly, has moved to movies. Now I'm doing my research, and I realized that I'd seen this DJ Roswell video essay that you made about his about his roguelite.
It's like a roguelite. The roguelike album is how I sold it.
It's a great way of selling it. But I would love for you to talk a little bit more about this, maybe in your head, especially this connection between video games and music. And like, I know this is a curveball. I know I didn't tell you to prep for this, but I was just thinking of I was just thinking of Roswell as something that I was like, I don't know. I just discovered it was something new for me at that time, and I listened to that album so much, and it just introduced me to such another like floodgate of artists. Yeah,
it's so funny. I might say something really controversial right here. I think sometimes gamers like need to be socialized into culture, if I'm being honest, because I was one of those people, honestly. You know what I mean? Like, if, like I was saying before, if I didn't discover, like, if I wasn't like a StarCraft or like Dota player or whatever on Twitch, I wouldn't have like got into EDM. You know what I mean? I had to be kind of socialized by somebody else to look into like music culture itself, you know? And I think, yes, the nature of short form is if I say the word roguelike in the first 2 seconds of a video, I'm gonna attract all of the gamers. You know what I mean? Which opens up a whole can of worms. A lot of them very antisocial, nihilistic, very mean, but also like a lot of them are just should probably just be like, 14, 15-year-olds who are interested in stuff like I was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you found DJ Roswell probably through like a mute chart or something like that. I found out about it through like Rate Your Music or like a recommendation from a friend. Like to me, it doesn't really matter where you find it as long like the music kind of finds you when it does, But I think with video games, like there's a lot of really, really great music in video games. Like I literally got into metal because of like Guitar Hero 3. You know what I mean? Like before that, my family was listening to like smooth jazz. I was going through my teen angst, and then I heard like Metallica 1 or like Slayer Rain and Blood, and I was like, yeah, this is my personality now. You know what I mean? And I know people have had this experience with like GTA 5. Like I know people who are into like Flying Lotus and like Flume and like Aphex Twin because they were listening to Fly Low FM while playing GTA 5.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I think that aspect is really, really cool. Like it's video games by definition are like an immersive experience, and if people love to like dive into games, I was talking about Dark Souls, there's like millions of hours of people talking about the lore of Dark Souls because it's so fascinating to them. Imagine somebody where like they liked Fly Low FM because it was the weirdest station at the time, and then suddenly you realize, oh, Flying Lotus is like a real producer and a real person, and that could be somebody's like personality, you know what I mean? And I think gaming and like music, it's just a match made in heaven, you know what I mean to be? And I think it's great for socializing people, I guess, like I said.
Sure. I also neglected to mention, but I think the first genre at all of music that I was into at like 10, 11 years old, my dad loves to tell the story of how I'd make him listen to dubstep drops at like 10, 11 years old. But that was in a vacuum. It wasn't at shows or anything like that. It was Monster Cat. Like
I know what you're talking about. Like, because I was also around for like best dubstep drops of most brutal dubstep drops of 2012, like compilation 100%. Or whatever, and you're listening to it as an extra sensory experience. You know what I mean? You kind of don't care where it comes from. You just listen to this because you're like, whoa, this is making my like teenage brain go crazy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. And it was drum and bass in particular at that age, where whenever I'd see a Monster Cat drop with drum and bass in the title, that was my thing. That was my jam. But it's so funny to look back on it now and look at just how little I knew about all of that, but it was still so interesting to me but still tangible. You know what I mean? It was, and definitely subconsciously influenced me.
I think that's why I like learning about like genres and like connecting all this stuff together, because like all these sounds and where the rhythms and stuff come from are so like abstract, you know what I mean? It's not like you can point to one artist and be like, this is where drum and bass came from. You have to like look at a whole scene of DJs and stuff that was coming up and be like, oh, we started using this sound because of this tune, and then everybody liked this tune and started using it, and in the case of like Monster Cat dubstep and drum and bass, like I didn't know about like the UK hardcore continuum or like OG dubstep or whatever I was listening to this. But like it's not, to me, it's because the sounds were really cool, and people who enjoyed like original dubstep, they loved it because the sounds were really cool. You know what I mean? Like it's the same thing. Like,
so we're reaching an hour, so I'd like to hop into those rapid fire questions. But your answers, I doesn't need to be quick. Like this is great. What's your favorite movie soundtrack?
Favorite movie soundtrack? Oh my gosh, I think there are so many good ones. If I really had to pick one off of my head, probably the Akira soundtrack. Because because think about it. This movie is so cosmic and so insane, so like Lovecraftian in a sense. It's so cyberpunk, but also the music. It's done by this group called Gaino Yamashiragumi, I believe is their name. They're kind of like a ensemble group from Japan. that mixes electronics with like traditional like drumming and stuff like that. And I love the soundtrack because it fits the what's happening on screen in such a contrasting way, where what's happening is simultaneously futuristic, you know, post-apocalyptic, but also like something rooted in something ancient. And when I hear like the main Akira theme with these like deep like voices and like this like gamelan like kind of like drumming and bells and stuff going on, it invokes like something in me that I just love so much. Gai no Yamashiragumi also has this album called Ecophony Reen that's like from the 80s or something, or 70s. It's only on YouTube, but that is one of my favorite albums of all time. And the fact that they did the Akira soundtrack is like mind-blowing to me. I think the director heard that album and was like, I want you to make something similar to this. And it fits what's happening on screen so well. If you want to hear like, if you want to experience like Akira, like the original soundtrack inspiration, I highly recommend that album.
Sweet.
Gai no Yamashiragumi, Ecophony Reen. Super insane. But yeah, that would be my choice off my head.
Yeah, I got to see Akira at a repertory cinema here in Toronto, so I was that was a great experience to see it with an audience for the first time. That was probably my third time seeing that film, so good memories with Akira.
Yeah.
I'll keep going. Yeah. What's your favorite like music related film? One that talks about the music industry or artists or musicians?
Oh, I have a really. This is gonna be my funniest answer yet.
Let's hear it.
There are ones that are great that are about music. Okay, I'll speed run some favorites first of all. If I had to pick like a music documentary, I have to go with Metallica, Some Kind of Monster. It's like a 2.5-hour documentary. It's about how they made Saint Anger, and like one of them's becoming sober, and it's watching like these like guys in their 40s and 50s be washed up rock stars basically, and you're witnessing this very ugly side of like a band that is making millions of dollars trying to like be creative and make their best album, but they are fighting every day in the studio. It's intense. It's like extremely funny, and it's also just really, really interesting. That's my pick for like an actual serious like music movie. But if I had to pick my most enjoyable music movie, it's this movie from 2014 called We Are Your Friends. It stars fucking what's his name? Your friend.
Zac Efron.
It stars Zac Efron. And he's like a DJ in the San Fernando Valley, and he's gonna make it. And he's gonna play this festival, and it's amazing. Like, if I'm being honest, it's a horrible movie, like one of the lowest performing box offices ever. But as a person who loves DJing and EDM, I love this. And it's like there was clearly somebody who, and I know somebody who like actually worked on this movie. There was clearly somebody being consulted, because there's just too much specific stuff being name dropped that's deep. But the way the movie progresses is like the most Hollywood kind of like, you know, cheesy flick way that's like very hopeful and about following your dreams, very like Obama era type movie. But like it's so like when I watch this, I can't help but smile. I'm just like, I love that this exists and has like a budget. I can show this to my mom and she gets it, even though this is not what my life is really like.
Right.
And yeah, I recommend giving it a watch. I don't enjoy it in the same way somebody would enjoy like The Room. I enjoy it because it's just so charming and applicable to like my life in like the most ideal way possible, I guess.
Oh, that's awesome.
I gotta I have a whole letterbox review on it that's like 5 paragraphs long.
Like, incredible. Yeah, I'll check that out after. I'll link it in the bottom too. I also want to give a shout out to, I don't know if you've seen this, and I actually, you have to see it if you haven't yet, but there's a movie from 1999 called Human Traffic, which is about the UK club scene.
I really want to watch it. That's like, it's like really high up on my list to watch.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I think has the funniest like rave scene that I've ever seen in a film. It's very good. I don't know. Amazing. I would love to hear your thoughts on it after you see it, because it's obviously I don't exist in this world, but it relates so much to what we were talking about, especially because it takes place in the UK, and it's very obviously intimately familiar with that subculture. It feels very intimately familiar with that subculture. So I don't know how accurate the references are, but it's an independent film.
See.
It's not some big studio that's making it, right? I feel like it's people who are embedded in that world. So, yeah, I wanted to give that a quick shout out. Let's see what else I have here. Back to specific music or any of that. What is an underrated region for electronic music that maybe something that's emerging in some part of the world that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Oh, it's easy. The Philippines, where I was born, where I'm from. Like there's a street genre called baduts. It's like a form of Filipino street techno. It's been happening since like the 2000s. It's very silly music. It's the best. It's extremely overly kitschy on purpose. Like basically taking tropes of like Alice DJ Better Off Alone, like the
Oh yeah.
like that type of like music, and like making it very like high pitched and silly, and doing this really slow like halftime dancing to it in the streets. It's very annoying music, and a lot of people hate it, but I think it's having a moment right now in the club scene. I actually have a side project that's just dedicated to making like Filipino baduts music, and I got to play a lot of it when I was in New York last weekend, and people like are primed for it. And yeah, I just want to shout out the Philippines. Like we have a lot of like just amazing DJs, and like there's an amazing scene coming out of the Philippines. Like, and it just makes me happy as like a person of color Filipino. I was born there. It makes me happy to see that like my people are like getting on the map a little bit. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it feels like this happens every once in a while where there's been a niche subgenre of electronic music somewhere in the world, and then it kind of slowly creeps its way into influencing. I mean, obviously Jamaica and reggae is a prime example of that. I think right now Brazilian funk is like blowing up in such a way that like no one could have expected it to globally, and it's so earwormy in a way that also fits into the conversation we were having about TikTok and Instagram and Reels and that sort of thing. So you always find those songs in the slew of content. Yeah, the algorithm. I don't know what it is about that music that clicks so well.
It's I love there's a lot of sides to baile funk. It's like both so like funky and fun, but it can also be very abrasive, but it can also be very like dancey. I have a good amount of Brazilian friends and like people on like my record label that like come from like baile funk, and that scene over there is pretty similar to the Philippines, where it's like a lot of like impoverished people just like trying to have fun, get away from their struggles by making the most ridiculous music possible, and I think I love that so much. Like,
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the genre that's come back in style that was unexpected to you, that you didn't think would reemerge? Because I feel like electronic music is very cyclical. Things come back in style and fall out of style. I think a big example of that right now is just how well Skrillex's newest album is doing.
Yeah. He kind of took it back to like this original form of like bass music and dubstep that's more minimal, which is really cool.
Yeah, but in the same way
that was his last album. His latest one is like going back to like the really, like you said, Monster Cat most brutal drops like era of
right. That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the album I'm talking about.
Yeah. I was talking about his 2023 album, Quest for Fire.
I think there's some like retroactive apologies that are due with Skrillex in particular, in the same way that we have with Nickelback, right? Love to hate, easy to hate, easy to shit on for some reason, even though the music kind of bangs.
My tangent on Skrillex before I answer your question was, it's so funny that like people outside of dance music see Skrillex in that way, that he was like this like punching bag for a while, because like for people like me who were like following Skrillex since like 2013 or whatever, like Skrillex has always been like a massively respected person in like large dance music and even like smaller underground dance music to an aspect, especially like over time as like things have matured and stuff like that. So to see people like say he's like back, I'm like, it's so interesting, because I'm like, Skrillex has always been like the high energy guy that's like pushing the envelope, out of every electronic artist that's super popular, he's like the bridge of like, let's take this extreme main stage like extra sensory stuff and mix it with like the experimentation of like he says Aphex Twin's one of his like biggest inspirations, and like as a person who's like really into Aphex, I legitimately hear it, like new stuff, old stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that like public favor is back to him, I guess. Critical favor. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not sure how reflective critical favor is of the general public necessarily, but I think in the discourse or just hearing people talk about that album, I just remember bro step is a pejorative term.
yeah, it's a
Right?
pejorative. Yeah. It still is to a lot of people, but
Yeah,
listen, I'm like it's Skrillex. Like it's the drops are insane. Don't is that what more do you want? You know, like
yeah, right.
uh
Speaking of genres and whatnot, it's funny how pejorative terms often just like they stick, right? Like krautrock is just
yeah, oh,
racist against
krautrock. In a way,
German.
even like IDM is kind of a pejorative term, but
Oh, 100%.
pejorative like by the people who accidentally made it. You know what I mean? It's pretentious, but there's
Yeah,
no like better name for it. You know what I mean? It's like people
yeah,
try to call it brain dance or introspective electronic music or whatever, but it's like no, IDM is the one that sticks. You know, and yeah, the terms are just terms to me. You know what I mean?
sure.
But anyway, I guess to answer your question about what genre I think has come back
Oh, yeah.
recently, I want to say like right now we're seeing a big resurgence in my neck of the woods of like breakbeat music, like big beat
Mhm.
music, people like the Prodigy and like Chemical
Mm.
Brothers and stuff like that. Like that stuff, it's one of the when I do research on house and techno, it's generally like pretty easy. It's like well documented in like certain regions and stuff like that. But the history of like breakbeat and like electro Miami bass, for example, it's very you got to dig a lot deeper. And I think it's really cool that the Prodigy is inspiring like a whole new generation of like EDM people to go harder with distorting breakbeats and making that the extra sensory thing. You know what I mean? There's an
Mm.
artist that I'm playing a show with named Nightpunk, who I've been a big fan of for a very long time. Um, who is like really rooted in like the Prodigy and like breakbeat and like big beat and stuff like that. I'm a huge fan of him. I'm doing a show with him and G Jones back to back EPROM in San Francisco. That's like it's a big like bass music thing, big extra sensory experience like type of thing. But the fact that like breakbeat is kind of into it is really cool to me because people would throw on like a breakbeat or whatever when I was like raving from like I don't know 2014 to 2018, and people just wouldn't know what to do. They're like, this isn't like a straight beat. I don't know how to dance to it. But now it's like, oh, this is like the big wall of sound breakbeat, which is really cool to me. That would be my
Yeah.
answer.
Oh, awesome. Okay. I've got one more, and then we can loop back around to the
Sure.
research question. Oh, well, this is sort of tangentially related too. What's been the most difficult video to research for? Like hard stuff that's hard to find, or something that's I don't know, like maybe touchy subject even, or maybe it's not something that you fully understand, like you were learning about for the first time.
This is a good question. I think one of the hardest ones for me to tackle was when I was talking about this genre called ambient plug music. The TLDR is like plug music is this variant of SoundCloud rap that's like kind of based on like dirty South music, trap music, and stuff. Um, and ambient plug is basically combining that with like IDM and like ambient like techno and making it
Mhm.
more lush and making it more a bit heady and stuff. I made a video about that, but it was so I got a lot of backlash for it because that scene is so online and so young, and they have their own like narratives about stuff that I don't honestly admit that I didn't understand the nuances and stuff of.
Mm.
Like I come from a dance music world and these kids come from like an online like all producer, all like hip hop beats like type of realm, you know, which is like amazing because it's like it's another form of what I call like folk music, where people just hop on FL Studio, export something, and like change the world if they want to. That's like sick to me. But like me trying to speak on why I like this scene, I feel like mentioned like the important people without understanding the significance and stuff. And that was just really hard for me to like reckon with, because I was like, I don't know if I got things wrong is the thing. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
I'm not afraid to admit when I'm like wrong about something. Like I will literally take stuff down if I feel like I said something like gravely incorrect. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But yeah, I think exploring like SoundCloud rap was like, through that lens, was really really hard for me at first. And I want to do it right like another time, basically.
Yeah. I do actually have one last one. We can talk about rave posters after this.
Rave posters. Oh, that's such a good one. I'm trying to think where this took me.
Yeah, you should do a video on rave posters and how they got their art style, because it
There
kind of,
is.
I think we can hop into that now too, because I think
No.
they're
Okay, I've got an album fresh on my head now
cool.
that I want
Let's
to talk
do it.
about.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with One of Tricks Point Never Replica for an album that took me down a rabbit hole that I wasn't expecting, because OPN up until this point in his career was making mostly like really spacey, jammy stuff on like a synthesizer. You listen to some of it's very, very ambient, very like no drones, very beautiful. For a while, I knew him as the no drums guy. Replica, I believe it was released in 2010 or 11 or something. It's an album that's based entirely off of sampling like lost commercials, you know, like American Express card commercials, old McDonald's commercials and stuff, and turning it into music, like and trying to sample it in like almost a Jay Dilla type of way on his MPC, but instead of making it like a hip hop beat or whatever, he's making it still very plunderphonic and still very like atmospheric and stuff. And this is like after he accidentally invented vaporwave or whatever. So it's not like he was trying to make vaporwave straight up. He was trying to create a different extrasensory experience through the sampling and subliminal like use of this old vaporware like commercial and material as like a commentary on like what we do when we like spend a lot of money on commercials. Like we just kind of toss it aside and stuff like that. I think the rabbit hole it took me down was like just the types of commercials he was using, where they come from and stuff like that. Also, I believe somebody on his subreddit like uploaded the exact samples he used, because he was like selling that MPC that he used to make that album. And I think researching and learning about like those samples and where he likely got them from, there's like a whole like Reddit thread about like all that stuff, and I still haven't even gone through all of it myself. I'll probably do a video on that, because that's one of my favorite albums of his. One of Tricks Point Never's Replica. I think just on the level of like he was making, it's like he was almost creating like an alternative timeline of vaporwave, and he wasn't even aware of like vaporwave's existence. There was just something in the air where he's like, I'm gonna comment on post-capitalism using like plunderphonic slowed down commercial samples. Meanwhile, other people are doing that, but presenting it in an entirely different way, you know, with like the museum busts and like the dolphins jumping through the Windows 95 logo and stuff like that. He's presenting it with this like image of like something that's like dark and dreary and like a reflection of the worst parts of like society and what we do with like commercial material and copyrighted material and stuff. But I feel like it's so freaky to me that he vaporwave and this were happening at the same time, and they both originated from him. There's just something really freaky about that to me. You know what I mean?
In a way too, to wrap it all back. You're looking under a rock, and actually what you're seeing as something presented as bitter, not even bittersweet, as blissfully nostalgic as vaporwave, in a way that is
almost like blissfully nostalgic is a good way to describe vaporwave. But what OPN was doing on this album is like almost like disgustingly nostalgic. It's like, here are these samples, I'm gonna morph them into something that's very abnormal, you know what I mean, that doesn't like bring you back there. It like makes you sit in a space that's a little bit uncomfortable, you know. Like
okay, and last one. I promise.
Yeah.
Because I keep thinking of new ones, but I'm gonna stick with this one.
Keep going. I don't care. I got all day. Like, well, at least the next couple hours.
Okay, well, I absolutely love the aesthetics of rave posters, and to me, it's similar to punk posters. There's like the same. I think construction wise, they're also the same. They're like zines, right? They're printed in the same way that zines were. And
I will be the first to admit I am not the most experienced on like rave flyers and stuff. I love graphic design, but somehow I have not done my research on rave flyers
that would
and
be
stuff.
a great topic, I think.
Yeah, it would be a great topic. I'm gonna write this down.
I feel like there's an aesthetic that they've landed on. I mean, again, all of these things are kind of in communication with one another, but when you want to evoke a certain feeling and you're in this subculture, you're saying, oh, I'm kind of similar to those guys that you saw last week, so let me make the poster look a little bit similar too. What is do you know of any posters that stick out in your memory of something that like maybe one that you were a part of yourself that was like, damn, this is good marketing for for my show?
Oh, for like rave flyers and stuff.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'm gonna honestly say the show that I just played in New York. I played 2 shows in New York. One is for Book Club Radio, which is like a themed thing that'll be on YouTube soon. But the second one is this more DIY, smaller group called Oomph Rave, OOMF Rave, and it's like a bunch of people I know from like the trap music subreddit and stuff, and they're like friends of friends. I show up, and it's like the most like 20s like raver people that are there to like, you know, be there with their friends in costume and like just feel the music and like drink and have fun. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm not gonna like play the most like cerebral music ever. I want to like, you know, bang it out. You know what I mean? And the flyer I think did such a good job because they took a bunch of like chocolate bars. I'll send this to you after, but they took a bunch of like chocolate bars, like the Hershey's chocolate bar and like the Kit Kat bars and stuff like that. They just replaced the logos with like the DJs playing. I was on like a Hershey's chocolate bar and stuff like that. One of my friends was on a Kit Kat or like a Twix or something. And to me, that is like a spirit of rave, you know, like we were talking about like sample culture and stuff and taking copyright and just doing whatever you want with it. Like who cares about the consequences as long as it's extra sensory and fun.
Oh,
sure. It's like doing that, but in like graphic design form.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like, oh yeah, we'll infringe on Nestle's copyright. Like who cares? It's like a party. Who cares? You know? And to me, that is like real rave attitude. You know what I mean? And to me, it fit like the music that was playing. I can't think of specifics off my head, but like you look at like some old rave flyers and they're literally like kind of parodying like popular design trends and stuff at the time. One example, this is a good example. There's a group called the Designers Republic. They're one of the most famous like kind of design studios out of like Sheffield, the UK, and they're like really popular all over the world. They've done a lot of Autechre's cover arts. They've done a few of Aphex Twin's cover arts. But they come from like a rave culture where they were combining different things. Like for example, they wanted to parody very modernist design that's very like Helvetica and very like tightly spaced fonts and stuff like that. So what they did with their 90s rave attitude was they took the Helvetica font and they smushed the letters together so much that you can barely read what the words are saying. They also took inspiration from the way that Japanese design at the time was using mascots and stuff, and they created their own little mascots and put them on like rave flyers. And yeah, like rave is just all about like who cares about who we offend. Like it's like shown in the design. It conveys all the information it needs to and stuff like that. There's so much more I can talk about regarding the Designers Republic, but they are a really good example of taking that kind of rave mentality and applying it on like a massive design scale, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would love to, if you could send me those, I'll add them.
Absolutely.
Add them to the episode for sure. Has the meaning of rave changed? Is it still just referring to something underground strictly, or is it?
No, it's not. Like rave can really mean anything now. To me, rave just means an electronic party where people are going crazy. In my opinion, I know a lot of people probably disagree with me on that. Rave originally comes from 90s UK rave culture where people are like raving in the fields illegally, you know, or raving in warehouses illegally, you know. Now some young people, their concept of a rave is going to like an Insomniac or like a Golden Voice event, like a corporate sponsored thing. And because there's DJs playing and there's like a lot of lights, they're like, oh, it's a rave, you know? And I know a lot of people will probably get like mad that they're calling it like a rave or whatever. But at the same time, like, I don't know, it's not really that important to me. So when I say that, when I talk about like rave design and like rave attitude and stuff like that, it is that kind of almost hedonistic, I shouldn't be here type of feeling that you get from like being in a venue, listening to dance music and stuff like that, that I find really, really cool. And I think is part of the spectacle of like dancing to dance music at a venue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't call like seeing a DJ in a club like a rave, for example.
Yeah.
But I would definitely call seeing a DJ in like a warehouse, even if it's like a officially licensed venue, I would call that a rave. You know, why not? You know?
Right.
But everybody has different opinions on it. But in my opinion, yeah, it's definitely changed a lot, and I don't think it's that important to me. Like,
no, right. Have you been to Toronto?
I have never been to Toronto.
Oh, nice. Oh, well, you should come by sometime. I think
I really want to.
yeah, that'd be awesome. I was gonna ask if you're playing locally nearby, I would obviously shout that out too. But yeah, you should visit. Toronto's a great city. I know we did just lose to your LA Dodgers, which is
I was just thinking about this. Yeah.
Yeah, that was. I'm a huge baseball fan. I'm a huge.
Damn, sorry about that.
Yeah. I don't know if you're a Dodgers fan or not.
You put up a good fight. I'm a Dodgers fan by proxy, as in I've grown up watching the Dodgers. Like I couldn't care less about baseball, honestly.
Fair enough.
But yeah, when people are celebrating, I gotta celebrate.
Like, oh yeah, was it? It was
nuts? Pretty crazy. Yeah, pretty crazy out here.
Were you mid-show or like...
I was actually in New York right before they won, and I was about to DJ. And I was checking it constantly because it was going overtime, I think. I was like 2 minutes before I went on, my friends was like, they won, and I was like, okay, thank God I can do this DJ set. Like, because if they lost, my friends would have just like, I don't know, like none of my friends super care about baseball, but they would have been like, damn, Ramon. Like,
oh, sure. I mean, it's a party in the city when that happens.
It's a party. Like, but
sure,
it was pretty funny.
Okay, I think we're gonna wrap up here. Ramon, thanks so much for coming on. That was awesome. And for my first music related interview, it is kind of crazy just how much overlap. How many like memories just emerged.
That's awesome.
From
I'm glad.
Music. So yeah. So thanks a lot for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you.
Any links or your socials or anything like that?
Yeah, so it's RamonPang everywhere. RamonPang. The short form videos that we were talking about, you can find them on Instagram, TikTok. I also make music as RamonPang. It's on all streaming services, YouTube, etc. I want to shout out my record label, Tabula Rasa Records. And I just want to shout out all the people who are just interested in hearing me talk. I know I expressed some scariness and dissatisfaction at times, but at the end of the day, like, it is really cool to, I don't know, just interact with really cool music people like yourself, Sean. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, awesome. I appreciate you coming on. That was great.